Hey, everybody, this is Mac with Veterans Achieve Business Systems. Uh, we were just having a conversation about skills and tools that some of us learned a long time ago and forgot. And it's kind of nice to be reminded how they're supposed to work. Uh, Being on Kathy Riley's Mastermind last hour, I got reminded of certain educational processes that worked then. I guess they can work now if I reincorporate them. Today's featured speaker, Mamie Lamley, I've come to say, and I'm not saying this to embarrass you, Mamie, I think you're one of the purest souls that I've met in this whole journey. And I really appreciate the time and the effort that you have given to me personally for the whole veterans group and trying to bring all this together. Um, it's interesting because when I talk about you, people say, "Well, what branch was she in?" I said, "She was in God's branch." Uh, I said she dealt with all the muckety mucks in Hawaii. One of our most strategic safeguards in the country, tied into your work with Special Olympics. And when I was in my mid-20s, I worked with uh, it wasn't Special Olympics, but it was a service organization that they were kind of like a sister club for a Civitan club that I was in. And I started this group, and on my 26th birthday, I was really feeling pretty cocky. And I'd had to go to lunch with this sister club, the little girls and brothers club, as I thought of it then. And the one guy said, "What's with you? You're all excited today." And I said, "Oh, it's my birthday." He said, "Oh, how old are you?" He said, "Oh, I'm pretty old." He says, "Really? How old?" I said, "I'm 26." And he goes, "Well, I'm pretty old. I'm 46." And one of the other guys jumped in, "I'm pretty old. I'm 63." And it went like that. And it was like a two by four upside my head that I always referred to them as the kids I was working with. And in fact, I was the kid. And I think it's what I like about this journey that we're on is that we all get to grasp a new educational platform. And hopefully we get more in touch with ourselves and maybe we get to help some others along the way. So maybe I'm going to let you take over because you have so many different things going on, and people are still coming in. Everybody wants to see Mamie. Uh, and we will go over there. I know there'll be questions afterwards.
You know, I'm going to show one slide. That's all I'm going to do, Mac. And I want to share it because I also want you to put the link for them to connect on our Voice the Valor.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to send you a
There,
request
there we go.
because this for me captured it. And there we go. Meeting. Okay. Share. And I just wanted to start off with this, Mac and I, give me a thumbs up, Mac, when you can actually see my screen. Awesome. So, this is where Gamma could have came in handy, but I was taking care of some $1 million mingle things. I couldn't get it done. So listen to Kathy because Gamma could bring your slides to life. But today, my message to you is this. Okay. How many of you are veterans? Please raise your hand. There you go. We got 3 veterans here. Mac is right. I am not from a family that is from military. Why? Because majority, when I was growing up, I was part of the time period where my brothers could be drafted. Anybody remember that? Right? And it was so amazing because when my brother turned 18, the draft went away. And so I am not from a military family, but you know what? My heart does live with our military family. Why? Because in Hawaii, my home was the home for a lot of military kids. And I got them from all branches. Why? Because where I lived, I could look down from my street, from the hilltop, I could see Barbers Point Navy Shipyard. If I just turned to the left, I could see Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, and I could see Hickam Air Force Base. And so as I grew up, I was not exposed to military until I actually became the director of Special Olympics. I'm going to say this, Mac. The stories that I got to hear from the veterans, and I'm going to include first responders because they too worked with me. The stories that I got to hear was amazing because in Hawaii, our culture is a oral culture. So we heard stories all the time. And this is why I really do appreciate Val, because she took the time to go get the stories, record it, and she's going to write a book on it. Now, how many of you have a story inside of you? We got 3 veterans here. Do you have a story that you could tell someone? Steve, I saw your hand come up. Talk to me a little bit.
Well, I was Vietnam era, but I did not go to Vietnam. I went to Germany. And so my biggest complaint was we only got to work in our MOS, which is military occupation. We only got to work in it 2 months out of the year when we went to the field. And so the other time we were just doing, you know, cleanup duty, getting everything in order, whatever they wanted us to do. So that part of it was not exciting, but the 2 months a year was great. We got to do our job. We loved it. It was, you know, a very teamwork oriented job. We were artillery ballistic meteorologists. So we set up weather balloons, and so they could adjust the artillery for the weather. Humidity, temperature, and wind all affect the artillery.
I love it. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
I saw Val go with her hand up real quick. Val, come on out.
I wanted to know what you did, and you just told me. Artillery, ballistics, weather balloons, humidity, temp, and wind. So I've got you down. I got you pegged for what you did. Thank you. Thanks for your service, too.
Steve, you just reinforced what I have on the screen. It's your voice. It's your story. It's going to be your impact. And I don't know if you realize this. And if you're okay, I'm going to stop the screen here. Val, if you don't know Val, Val's the keeper of love and history. And she's got history over 27 plus years. And she's telling stories that majority of us have never heard. And guess what, Steve? Your story just made an impact because I saw Val taking copious notes right there. Because the story that you have, you may not think has an impact, but Steve, it has. Because for what you did in Germany, for what you did in service, and I'm going to speak also to Mac and also Maggie. What you think did not make a difference, help ripple effect. And I can tell you this is why I am so strong in advocating the voice of a vet or a veteran or a first responder, because those unsung heroes are the stories that we never get to hear unless we actually share it. Does that make a difference? Yes. And so for those of you who are listening to this replay, I want you to understand this. You know, what Mac is doing is giving you an opportunity to give your voice, give your story and your impact. And today, what I'd like to do for you is this, you know, if you believe that you don't have a story, I want you to start reframing that, because you do have a story. And I can tell you this, what I can see of Val, she's already spinning the story that she could tell about you, Steve. Isn't that a gift? And Maggie, in your soft, quiet strength, you got a story behind you too. And I'm not going to ask you to tell the story today. I'm going to save it for another day. You okay with that? Because how many days have I been telling you, Maggie? Step up. Your story does have an impact. And your story is waiting. Someone's waiting to hear the story that you want to tell. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, Val. This is interactive, guys. You okay with that,
Okay.
Matt?
And what I know from the 200 oral histories I did, when I went into a house and someone said to me, well, I really don't have anything to say, it was a candy bowl full of candy, because they just thought nothing was important, and it blew me away. So your stories are incredibly important, and yours too, Maggie.
Awesome. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to think about what those stories potentially could be. And then we've got the gift of what Val brings to the table, because she gets to spin it and she gets to pull it. And, you know, I heard her talk about a story called that thread that pulled on her. And that's what the stories that she's going to be what she's going to be bringing to life is all about. I'm going to talk a little bit more about one more opportunity that can help us get that word out. So veterans, if you're listening, I want you to understand this, write this down, voice to valor, voice to valor. And what Mac's going to do is Mac's going to actually put a link in the chat box so that you can actually sign up for a Voice to Valor interview. And guess what, guys? You're not going to be on your own, because Mac and I are going to work with you to help what I call procure your story. How many of you are ready for that? Right? So for those of you who are listening, I want you to take some notes, because what Mac is going to do is he's going to give you the opportunity to share your story. That's going to be your voice, and then make that impact. And your job is not to do an impact or make an impact. Your job is to tell your story, because your story alone will be the ripple effect that impacts someone else's life. Okay. So I want to start with the first tip I want you to keep in mind as we start to think about the story that you could tell is, I call it mission readiness. Mission readiness, write that down. And mission readiness, if you go back to your experience with the military, it's about understanding and knowing your message. Okay? Because you never enter into a mission without a briefing, right? Military, our military veterans, you get a briefing every time you go in to a mission. Well, that's what we're going to do for you in getting your voice ready for the Voice to Valor. Okay. And I know I'm excited, and so is Mac, because every podcast that we're going to be getting you prepped for is also going to be prepped for airing on our Achieve TV, our Achieve YouTube channel. It's going to be placed on Mac's website, as well as my websites, my LinkedIn and my Facebook. Okay. And what I want you to do is this. When you start to take a look at how do you get mission ready to do your podcast, what is some of the things that you can remember from your time in service that you want listeners to remember? What are some of those things that you can think of that you could share that could help other veterans or their families remember? How would they feel? And what could they do to support your story and cause? That's your mission readiness. That's the message that I want you to start thinking about. What can you share? Okay. I'm just going to give an example. Steve, you mentioned, we didn't do much. We did a ballistic, and you went through a whole line of something. I'm like, whoa, what is that? And I can tell you this, you probably got things prepped in case something had to take place. And if you hadn't meticulously set that up, you wouldn't be ready for your mission, would you? So you see where I'm at? It's about what is it that you did, and don't discount it, because everything, I know this from our military because I worked with them for over 35 years. Yep. So I wasn't born into it, but I can tell you this, I got to work with some of finest. Okay. And what they did was every job that was assigned to someone, or the mission assigned, it was important, because what happened is it's like a well-oiled machine. Yes. Every person has a part, and every part is part of a team or the whole. You talked about that too. Yes, Steve. And so when you are mission ready, this is what I want you to be able to talk about. Your mission on a podcast, when you come out and talk on our Voice of Valor, is to inspire veterans to see where you've been and to give hope to where they can actually go. And that's what Mac is setting up here. Yes, Mac? You're giving us a platform to actually come together to see what else is possible. And what happens? What happens after you serve? What happens? And what plans are you going to be making? And I'm going to say this, I do know this. Being in the military for the 20, 30 years plus that people dedicate their lives, they know one way of doing things. And when they exit, that's a big question, isn't it? When they exit, what is possible for them? And this is where Mac is actually putting together an amazing program where he's bringing in different people to actually talk about that. What's possible? Could you be an entrepreneur? And if you choose to be an entrepreneur, this is the place to be, because Mac's got contacts to help you build that business. Okay. So mission readiness is the first step for your podcast. The second thing that I want you to keep in mind is, what is going to be your story strategy? Okay. So Maggie, what's your story strategy? You don't have to answer. I'm just using your name as an example. Okay. And I want you to know this. I want you to share your stories from the heart and not the headlines. You guys understand that? Share from the heart and not the headlines. Because we want to know about you. And when we're listening to a story, we want to be able to actually be transported to where you're at, because we don't get that side of the stories. And when we get to experience what you've gone through, and for some, it's hard, but it's the stories that actually are untold that I know Val is looking for, and so is Mac. What are those stories that are untold that we can share with the world? So your story strategy, I'm going to say this, you might want to write this down. Your story strategy is going to be your most important and powerful weapon of influence. Because the story that you're going to unleash allows you to literally share the before, the during, and the after impact that you went through. That's your story strategy. And I want you to also take a look at, some of that vulnerability. And don't be afraid to step into it, because guess what? When you can do that, people will connect with you. And that's where transformation begins. And that's why titles are not important. When you're able to take what you've gone through and truly share it with emotion, with authenticity, and it could be the past challenges, the lessons that you learned, and how you moved from those lessons. And I can tell you, every time I hear a story from a first responder or a veteran, there's a lesson attached to it, and a lesson that has changed their life. Okay? So that's the second part of what your story is going to look like. Okay? When you tell your story, I want you to know this. Your audience is the people on the podcast. They may be watching you or they may be listening to you. Okay? And when that happens, you notice my voice is not just monotone. I get excited, I lean in, I use bigger voice when I want to emphasize something, and I use my hands also. But don't use your hands like this, because that's very distracting. But those are some of the things, if you choose, not if, when you choose to be on the podcast, we'll go through some of those things with you. We're going to make sure that you're comfortable. You got your mission critical readiness. You've got the story strategy that you're going to do. And the second thing is this: how are you going to command the communication that you're going to use when you're telling your story on that podcast? Okay. And these are some of the things we're going to work with you on. We're going to help you lead with presence. So I hope you're hearing this. We're not just going to say, Mac's not just going to say, okay, Steve, I got your appointment for your podcast tomorrow at 10 o'clock. No, you're going to say, Steve, you're going to say, hey, Mac, I want to tell a story. And then Max and I will book an appointment with you to talk about what's your story? What's your story? We're going to help get you prepped. Readiness, strategy, communication. All the things that you learned while you're in service. Yes. All the things that you learned while you're in service. Yes, Mac, come on out.
You know, as I sit here and I'm listening to you, some basic points I signed up before I got out of my senior year, and that I was 17 years old. I didn't have a clue what I was doing and that, but I thought that I was going to be smarter than the government, smarter than the Marine Corps. I was thinking that, being a jet mechanic would really give me a good job when I got older. So I got a guarantee for aviation, and that, well, the Marine Corps didn't have the same idea. I learned how to blow stuff up and did aviation ordnance. But the stories were all different. When I went to boot camp and I was standing on the proverbial yellow footprints, and that we all stripped down, they shaved our heads, all of our personal clothes went to a box, got shipped home, and we were all green. There were no colors, there were no races, and it has served me so well in my life that I don't judge people because of what they were born, but I understand them because of who they truly are, not the superficial box that we all get put into. And learning those lessons to communicate with other people, to me, has been very valuable.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, Mac, how many do you know went into the military thinking one thing, and guess what? They got something else. Yes.
Yeah. Most of us didn't get to choose what we wanted to do.
So with that in mind, those are stories too. So the stories that we're looking for doesn't always have to be in the midst of battle. You got that, guys? It doesn't have to be in the midst of battle. It could have been a struggle that you had to overcome that has impacted the life that you lead today and the impact that you're providing to others. That's what I'm always looking for also. What did you learn? And everything that we do in life. And I'm excited because, I did get to hear Val talk about, that thread, that invisible thread that pulls people in. And that invisible thread in stories is what I call the hook that actually brings in people into your story so that they say, Steve, I want to learn more. Maggie, tell me more. Mac, that was unbelievable. I didn't know you blew up stuff. Right? So when we are in the audience, we get to learn a lot about the people that we're listening to and we're watching. And that's the one thing with the, when Matt came and said, maybe let's, I'd like to do this and this to serve our veteran community and our first responders. I said, I'm all in. Because I would say, Mac, about, I don't know if I told you 10 years ago, because I was working in with our military, they were my biggest supporters, guys. And I got to hear the stories and the whys. Some of them were still in the service. And it was amazing how some said they went in because they were lost. Some of them said they were in because they needed to get away from home. And I said, you got in for different reasons. Why did you stay in? Because you're a 20 year, 25 year. What was it that kept you there? And that's when the stories came out. That's when the stories came out. Okay. And so the podcast that we're going to be putting together is, what is that voice that you have that's been hiding inside? How do we tap into that voice and how do we bring those stories forth? Because there truly is somebody out there in the world, not just where you're sitting, but there's people out there in the world just waiting to hear those stories. I think I've said this to Val many times. We need to get those stories out because those are the stories that you can't read or hear in life today. Those are not the stories that are a part of our history, right, Val? Those are the stories that have been kept hidden with people who are still here and for those who have already passed on. And that's why it's so important to get your voice, your story, so that you can make that impact. And that's where we're going to start with Voice to Valor. Stories are all personal. And part of the reason why Mac and I have started the Voice to Valor, along with a lot of other volunteers, guys, is because we've got the expertise in our community to help get you through the stories. And all we got to do is get you started. Because once we do that one unplug, Steve, you're going to say, you know what? I remember, right? And then Mac says, oh my God, I remember. And that I remember statement leads to another story. How many of you have experienced that? Yeah. Listening. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Listening. And for those listeners out there saying, oh, that girl, I don't know if I can come on to a podcast and tell a story. Well, guess what? There's so many ways to do a podcast, everybody. If you're not comfortable being on camera, we can do an audio podcast. I tell you, we'll make it work for you. We'll do an audio podcast. And then if you tell me, Mimi, I got another story, awesome. We'll do an audio podcast and an audio podcast until you finally say, hey, it's time for us to do a video podcast. And we're good with that. Now, the other thing that I want you to understand is this. What if that one story not only led to you being on Voice to Valor? All right, listeners, lean in. What if someone like a Val or someone like a Maggie was listening and they said, wow, that's an amazing story. Let me capture it. Now you're making a whole different impact. So now we've gone from your voice and your story to a possible story in a book. And how many of you think a story in a book could go even further than the seat that you're sitting in? Yes, that is what we call unlimited possibilities. So we're going to start where you're at. I don't know if this is exactly what you wanted to hear today, but I think it's so important for us to encourage those listening to really step up. You got a story to tell, please contact Mac. Mac, did you put the
I did. It's in the chat. There's a link that will actually say that you would like to tell your story and the questions that go along with it. There's a photo with 2 QR codes, one to join this every week, so please share it, and one to join the Veterans Achieve Business Systems group of Achieve Systems. So we're here for you. I can't, I think I have like 70 some years of stories that have popped in my head since you started talking. And the funny thing, it's not just about, and you said it, it's not just about the combat veteran that went charging over the hill and all the war stories that we all can tell when we were kind of in that. The one that I keep thinking of is myself and about 11 other guys. We went to a concert together, and one of the guys lived in California. We were in Pendleton. He lived in between where we were, and we stayed the night at his parents' house. And going into the concert and being embarrassed that we were all Marines because it was all the hippies we were with. But that story just, comes out. It was an awesome day. I still remember the exact day, April 6th, 1973, that I got to go do that. It's like, why do I remember that day? So, it's
well,
fun.
imagine this, Mac. 1976 is what you said, right?
1973.
1973.
At the Ontario Speedway.
Look at this. This is how stories begin, Mac. This is how stories begin. So I'm going to ask you, we've got a few more minutes. As we were talking, Steve, Maggie, was there a story that popped up in your mind that really went like this? Whoop! That you say, oh, you know how it is, right? You're in a group and everybody goes, ooh, I got one to tell. What would that story sound and start with? Steve, you got a story that came to mind? And then Maggie, I want you to think about that and come out after, okay, hon?
Well, I remember about 9 years ago, I said, gosh, I'd like to contact my old Army buddies. And I tried to find them, social media, however, and I could only find one because he was still living in the same small town in California. But the sad thing is that he didn't have a very good life after the Army, and he blamed it on the Army. I'm not sure how much that was, but when I was in the Army, I used to look up to this guy. I thought, he had a great sense of humor. He seemed to have a lot of leadership capabilities, and to just find out that he's not doing well, he's just surviving. And I contacted him a few weeks ago because I hadn't heard from him, and I think he's kind of, I don't know, doesn't want to be reminded that I'm somewhat successful. And so my heart goes out to him for sure. But it's just
Thank you.
amazing that he did not take off after the Army, And I know I struggled when I got out. I think I might have said it in this group before, but when I got out of the Army, I got a job right away, but then I had a hard time getting out of bed because nobody was there to get me out of bed like the Army did. And so I lost that job after about 10 days. And luckily I got my old job back and started to get it together.
Steve, thank you so much. As you were talking, I'm always watching, okay? I was watching Val because Val just helped someone find someone, right, Val? And I think that's the biggest thing for a lot of the military that I know. They're like, I remember this one amazing person and I wish I could reach out to them, but I just don't know how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Val. Come on out.
Ancestry is amazing. And you can find a lot about people. You might find if you remember their father or just them. Now it won't give you where they are, but you can, I don't think, but Ancestry's been pretty helpful to me. I found children and, sometimes, and it's just an interesting way of trying. And even white pages, if you know where they live or have an idea, the white pages are pretty good. You might have to pay a few dollars to get that, but it'll give you their phone number and their address.
Awesome.
If we had close relationships, and I actually went through that, Val, William Douglas Cornwell was my best friend in the Marine Corps. I got out on a medical. He followed on a medical afterwards. He actually came to Phoenix because he had visited and the girls were wearing hot pants and halter tops in January. So he thought Phoenix was a great place to be. And he was married and he lived there for about 6 months. He moved back to Cincinnati, and over a couple of years, I lost track with him. About 6 years ago, I remembered his little brother's name. So on Facebook, I started looking up Tim Cornwell. And here was a Doug Cornwell on his friends list. I never would have recognized him. The story about Doug is his injury, where he thought it was a leg injury, was a back injury. He'd been in a wheelchair for over 40 years. And I went to visit him when I went to Florida, and I came back home through Ohio and visited him. And we recreated a picture my mom had taken of us in 73. In that picture, he had his leg. I was standing behind him. The recreation was me standing behind him, but you can see that he was in his wheelchair. I lost Doug a couple weeks ago, which happened to be on my anniversary of going into the Marine Corps. And I spoke a week earlier. I had found some old wine bottles that he and I had shared, and one had a Monet painting on the label, And he was cracking up. He says, I can't believe you saved that stuff. I says, I don't throw anything away. That's why I can never move to a smaller house. But I had the conversation. So I would encourage you, Steve, to reach out, to be sympathetic, not to the point of embarrassment, but we're all on this life path for a reason. And the stories may help us get there.
And could I say that there was a man that I met who had 4 jumps into Europe, which was not many people bailed out of a plane into Europe, and they were clandestine and they would set it up for the other soldiers to come in. And he was so angry when I met him, and we started doing his oral history, and it started to unravel, and it started to unravel, and it started to unravel, so much that he didn't quit telling his story. And his daughter called me and said, would you tell him to stop? She said he talks about it all the time, but he was happy and he was healthy and he had overcome the things that were so difficult for him, and he really enjoyed the rest of his life. And I would love to see every veteran be able to allow, you don't have to tell all the gory details. You don't have to tell that. A man who was a prisoner of the Japanese said that to me. He said, you have to turn it over to the higher power, and whatever that is for you, you have to tell your story, not all the gory details, but you have to become comfortable with it. And when you start telling your story, you can write it down. And sometimes when you tell it, you see a different version of it than how you've always imagined it. And that sometimes helps you break free and change. And if you want to, you don't have to change, but there are lots of ways that telling your story gives you more than not telling your story.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for the share. Maggie, I saw you thinking because I saw you moving. What was that story that you remembered? What was that story, hon?
You're muted.
Sorry, was thinking way too hard. Thinking about some of the things that I saw, thinking about some of the people I haven't thought about in a long time.
That's
Yeah.
valuable in itself.
Well, with me, I was just a transportation specialist. I didn't go across sea. I stayed stateside. I wouldn't even know where to start. Well, and some of the things I saw, I probably shouldn't ever talk about. I don't know.
But Maggie, you were affected by all of those things. And sometimes maybe you don't need to talk about them, but maybe you need to write about them so that you can see them in a different way. And maybe forgive the people, or even, I don't know, I did it. I forgave myself for some things. And that might be helpful.
There were some things that happened that, and I'm sorry, guys.
Go for it. Let it go. Just let her go.
Save space.
There were things that I wonder if I would have done better, would those people still be alive?
Oh.
And I'm sorry, guys.
Deep breath. You're okay. You're safe.
Some of the
Thank you,
things that
Maggie.
I think that we need to understand is we don't have over control over life and death.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And our actions, we tend to see the negative things because they're pointed out to us. The things that were a positive effect on somebody,
Mhm.
and that people may recognize it but never talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have to go forward with our own purpose. I mean,
Yeah.
This is well, there she is.
I'm sorry, guys. I
You
just,
don't need to be.
No
I
apologies.
don't, I usually don't even talk about things. I just keep it all inside.
Mm,
That's your first problem.
What else do I have, Mac? I mean, there are things that, I mean, unfortunately, like at conference, I ended up accidentally unloading on Sonia and feel horrible about it.
No. But she would have left, she would have stopped and walked away if she wasn't there for you, but she wanted to be there for you.
I mean, there were people that did a whole lot more things in the service than I did.
It means you have something to do now.
Do what?
You have something to do now. You just have to understand it. And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish with the Voices to Valor is at 18 or whatever we were all young and dumb. Probably the first time away from home. First time with different people from all over the country. Being shipped off to other countries like Steve going to Germany and dealing with the culture there, both from the military perspective, but also the civilian perspective.
Yeah, well, the biggest part of when I joined, the recruiter, I swear, not speaking bad. Well, yeah, I am going to speak bad about recruiters. He promised me that my daughter would have the best education on the planet. The hardest part of leaving for basic was giving her a hug and knowing I wasn't going to be able to talk to her for a while. And her saying, I'll see you tonight. And I just gave her a hug because I didn't have the heart to tell her that, yeah, no, you're not going to see me for a while. She was 6 months old. So there were things that were missed while I was in basic.
you know, Maggie, thank you so much for having the courage to share that. And I'm going to say this. The pain that you went through is the credential that someone else needs to hear. Okay. And one step at a time. And the thing is this, you have so much wisdom inside of you. And I'm going to speak to you because I got to know you. And at the same time, I still have much to learn about you. Yes. But I can tell you this. You have strength, you have power, and you do have stories to tell. We just got to figure out which stories could actually help you unleash what's inside of you. And that's what stories can do. Okay. And you may not be ready for the podcast. You may not be ready to share that. But I can say this. I bet you weren't ready to share what you just shared, honey. And you just did. Yes. And
I trust
you did.
you guys.
Thank you. And that is the power that I see in every story that's out there. If you ever, you know, what really floats my boat is sitting and listening. And I think Val gets me when she's talking about something and then we just start expanding and seeing that this is not the limitation here. And it's not the limitation here. And when we get that far out, it's like, wow, there's no limitation on the possibilities of what stories could do to impact people's lives. And I want you to understand this, Maggie. What you did here did make a difference. And the other thing too is that there are lessons that I believe that you hold right here that someone needs to hear. That's a story. That's a story. Okay, Maggie? And the ability for me to sit here and watch where you've come, because yes, you have come, where you have come to and from is priceless. Is priceless, Maggie.
Mhm.
I think I said, I told you the first time I met you, I was up on stage talking about values-based personalities. And you didn't even think I would recognize you or remember you. But when I looked in your eyes from that stage, I knew there was more that you were asking. I just didn't have the time at that moment to sit down and talk more about it. And I think you know this. I haven't stopped. I still keep showing up in your life because this is why. Maggie, Steve, Mac, Darlene, and Val, you have stories to tell. And that's what keeps me sticking around. Because the stories that you have that have yet to be shared could be power for someone else that's stuck in a wheel that they don't even realize they're in. Okay? So this is what I want to say to you, Maggie. Thank you for being vulnerable enough to take that deep breath, go off camera, and then come back on camera, because not everyone is made that way. And that tells me that you have stepped forward. And I'm going to keep watching you step forward, okay? And one day, you really are going to sit down with me and tell me more.
You better have a big Kleenex box.
Hey, I
Got one.
can do that. I can do that. All
I think
right.
that's a great place to end this. I will say that this is a special week in that the Marine Corps birthday is on Monday, number 250. On Tuesday next week is Veterans Day, but also my bride's birthday. I think it's the only reason I got together with her is she was born on Veterans Day. We will have Jason Miller and Nathan Wheeler. And we're going to try something a little bit different. This whole thing that we do is kind of how do we feel that day? Does one person talk? Do 10 people talk? Do we have an open group meeting? Do we wipe our tears away, which I've done a couple times today? And that I like the format. And Mamie, I really appreciate your part today in that. But any last minute questions? There's stuff in the chat, save it. There's QR codes to share this event so people can register for the mastermind. There's also a QR to become a member of the group, and we put the link if you would like to tell your story. And um, Fabienne, my VA, who kind of keeps me straight, she calls it an application. It's not really an application. It's just a way for us to get to know you, what you would like to talk about, your smiley face picture, so we can share it with the world. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming today. We'll all see you all soon.
Awesome.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you.